Way back, 2002. British cinema didn't know what was about to hit it. A zombie movie was coming, except it wasn't really a zombie movie. 28 Days Later opens not with a bang, but with a breach. Three well-meaning, kind-hearted, and completely unprepared animal rights activists break into a lab. They're hoping to save the chimps. Instead, they accidentally release the apocalypse. You know, normal Tuesday. And here's the twist. This wasn't your typical brain-eating, slow-mo, George A. Romero zombie flick. No, these creatures weren't dead. They were infected, alive, enraged, and fast. The infection spreads fast. Like vomit in your face fast. Through blood, through saliva, through chaos. And within days, Britain is falling. 28 days after patient zero, a guy named Jim wakes up in a hospital bed. No idea what happened. Completely naked. And yes, we all wondered. Why was he naked? Plot hole or weird hospital policy? He stumbles through an abandoned London, the streets eerily quiet, the city practically breathing in its own silence. That moment became iconic, not because it had flashy effects, but because it felt real. Raw. Like you were walking beside Jim, wondering if the world had ended. When Jim runs into survivors, Selena and Mark, he quickly realizes this isn't just a bad dream. It's hell. And the rules are simple. Stay alive, stay moving, and don't hesitate. If someone's infected, you end it. Fast. Selena doesn't flinch. Mark gets bit, and without a second thought, she kills him. That moment defines the world they now live in. Sentimentality, that gets you killed. From there, we follow Jim, Selena, and a few others, Frank and his daughter Hannah, as they head toward a rumored safe zone controlled by soldiers. And here's where things take a turn. Because while 28 Days Later is remembered for its zombies, infected, the real horror isn't always the monsters. It's the people. It's what humans become when structure collapses.
Is here. The answer to infection is here.
At that so-called safe military outpost, Major West isn't just protecting survivors. He's got other plans. Horrible, twisted plans. Ones involving repopulation by force. You get the idea. Jim transforms. No longer the passive survivor. He becomes something else. Primal, brutal, a man who literally gouges eyes out and unleashes infected into the base to save his people. By the end, only Jim, Selena, and Hannah survive. They escape, and we're left with this fragile hope. A banner spelling out hello as a plane flies overhead. And that's what 28 Days Later did. It stripped the genre down, gave it urgency, and then handed it to you with trembling hands. This wasn't about monsters. This was about people. About what rage does, not just to the infected, but to everyone. The film used low-budget cameras, a crew that moved like ninjas, and a script that let silence scream louder than gore. Danny Boyle didn't need fancy lenses to scare you. He needed one thing: honesty.
I love the cameras and experimenting. If you've got a reason within the story or within the idea or the way you want to do the story that allows you to employ technology, I love doing that because it opens up opportunities that are not necessarily classical.
It worked. 28 Days Later didn't just revive the zombie genre. It mutated it. It gave birth to fast zombies. It inspired a wave of new horror storytelling, from The Walking Dead to Train to Busan. But it was more than that. It asked something bold. What if the monster wasn't just the thing chasing us? What if it was us, once the world fell away? Let's talk about sequels. Most of the time, they're like reheated leftovers. Familiar, sometimes still tasty, but rarely as fresh or powerful as the original. But every now and then, a sequel shows up, kicks the door down, and screams, "You thought that was bad? Watch this." That's 28 weeks later. It's 2007. 5 years have passed since Danny Boyle and Alex Garland unleashed the rage virus on an unsuspecting audience. But this time, Boyle takes a step back from the director's chair, handing it over to Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. 28 weeks later picks up in the aftermath, not of the virus itself, but of its supposed end. The UK government says the virus has burned out. The infected have starved. Nature has reclaimed the cities. It's over. So now, let's rebuild. Let's go home. The US military rolls into London and sets up what they call the Green Zone. A safe space, fortified, disinfected, under control. And right there is the first mistake. Because control, as we're about to learn, is just an illusion. But first, we meet Don, a survivor, a father, a man who, in the opening scene, abandons his wife during a savage attack. It's one of the most gut-wrenching intros to a horror movie ever. They're holed up in a cottage, safe-ish, with other survivors. Everything seems okay. Don is now living in the Green Zone. His 2 kids, Tammy and Andy, return from abroad, reunited with their guilt-ridden dad. But here's where the real nightmare begins. The kids sneak out. They find their old home, and inside, somehow, miraculously, they find their mother, alive. Somehow, she survived the infection. She was bitten, sure, but never turned. Scientists discover she's a carrier. She's immune, a ticking biological bomb. This is where the US military steps in. They try to contain it, quarantine, scrub the area, but it's too late. Don kisses his wife. A single drop of blood hits his eye. And just like that, the rage virus is back. And the film doesn't hold back. The second the virus returns, 28 weeks later becomes a full-blown nightmare factory. The Green Zone collapses. Snipers start shooting civilians. Flamethrowers scorch entire buildings. Helicopter blades slice through waves of infected in one of the most brutally creative kills ever put on screen. And running beneath all this chaos, a family, 2 kids, and a man named Sergeant Doyle, played by Jeremy Renner, who risks everything to protect them. This is what separates 28 Weeks Later from your typical horror sequel. It isn't just escalation for the sake of gore. It's escalation with purpose. The themes shift. It's not just survival anymore. It's about institutional failure. Because here's the dark truth. The virus didn't destroy the safe zone. The government did. They panicked. They didn't listen to science. They tried to cover it up, to control it. And when that failed, they burned it all. Visually, 28 Weeks Later goes bigger. The camera work is slicker. The editing sharper. But the core is still there. That sense of dread that made the first one so unforgettable. One thing that really stands out? Speed. Not just the infected, but the pacing. The movie never lets you breathe. From the moment the virus resurfaces, it's a runaway train. But somehow, Fresnadillo also makes space for heartbreak. The death of Sergeant Doyle. The sacrifice of the pilot who risks it all. The children, now orphaned, haunted by the choices of the adults around them. And just when you think maybe, just maybe, they've escaped, we cut to Paris. An infected man stumbles into a subway. People scream. Fade to black. It's spreading. And that's the gut punch ending 28 Weeks Later leaves you with. 28 Weeks Later isn't just a horror sequel. It's a warning. About government response. About weaponizing safety. About how one man's guilt and one agency's arrogance can tear down an entire city. It asks the same question as the first film. but from a different angle. What if the virus isn't the problem? What if we are? It's brutal, bleak, unforgiving, but it's also brilliant. And it laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the most anticipated sequel in the trilogy. A film that took 28 years, both in the story and in real time, to arrive. But that's where we're headed next. Because the rage didn't just survive, it evolved. 28 years is a long time. In the real world, entire civilizations rise and fall in that span. Technology mutates, cultures shift, and generations pass the torch. In the world of 28 days later, 28 years isn't just a time jump, it's a radical transformation. Not just of people, but of the virus itself. Welcome to 28 years later. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We do cinematic deep dives every week. Stuff you won't find anywhere else. Alright? The first thing you should know, Danny Boyle is back. And so is Alex Garland. Ruins of the past. They're constructing something bigger, meaner, and more cinematic than ever before. And they're doing it with a smartphone? That's what sets this film apart immediately. The look. It's jarring at first, almost too real. But then, like the virus, you see those bullet time rigs? Boyle's not trying to hide the artifice here. In fact, he's highlighting it. 28 years of hiding.
The 28 years gap makes you think, how would... Never mind, everybody will be concentrating on how the survivors survive. Everybody likes to sort of, is a bit vicarious. You think, oh, they go back to subsistence farming, they barricade the causeway and stuff like that, and they protect it with bows and arrows and all that kind of stuff. And we like inhabiting that world, but we beg think, no, if it's 28 years and it's still around, the virus has learned to survive itself. Right. And how has it done that? And it won't have done it if it's going to expend so much energy and rage. Then how is it going to feed itself? So these infected, the ones that survive, not the super skinny ones who are clearly going to die, the other ones have learned to eat. And if they've learned to eat, they've learned to hunt. And if they've learned to hunt, because they don't have any weapons, they'll have had to organise. Right. So you get this kind of ripple effect of the way that the virus has changed a bit and evolved, and you want to introduce a new ingredient like that in something like this that's coming so long after the original. So that's what we tried to do.